I spoke to a number of black voters who fought to get you elected, and now they feel as though you're not fighting hard enough for them. So what do you say to these black voters who say that you do not have their backs as you promised on the campaign trail?
I've had their back. I've had their back my entire career. I've never not had their back. But part of the problem is, as well, I have not been out in the community nearly enough.
And that is easier said than done with the 50-50 Senate and lots going on in Washington. The Republican-controlled state houses not making things any easier. Last year, 19 states passing restrictive voting laws, things like making it a felony to give someone a drink of water if they're standing in line to vote. And more are set to do so this year. Some have even pre-filed bills before their state legislatures even started the 2022 session. Tennessee is one of those states with pre-filed bills that would initiate reviews of the 2020 election results. Representing Memphis, Tennessee, is State Rep London Lamar. She joins us now. Let me see if I have this right. This is a bill to look back on 2020.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, our state is ran by Republicans who truly believe that the election was stolen and there were things that were done ineffectively. I myself had questioned the Secretary of State, and I was asking, has there been any fraudulent votes seen from the 2020 election? And he said no. So what this is a politicized tool in order to get their base riled up, to get people out to the polls to vote against our interests. Again, yesterday's failure of the vote is exactly why places like Tennessee are able to make legislation and pass laws that suppress people's vote. In my state, over a decade ago, we were in the middle of the nation in voter turnout, and with continuous voter suppression laws like what you just mentioned, criminalizing voter registration, making us register 30 days before an election, not being able to have same-day voter registration is the exact reason why we're now at the bottom of the nation when it comes to voter turnout. And coming from Memphis, Tennessee, the place where Dr. Martin Luther King died, and we just celebrated him the other day, it is one of the greatest failures of the Biden administration is to be able, in the U.S. Senate, is to be able to secure voting rights. So states ran by Republicans can't continue to discriminate and take away our voting rights. So it's imperative that we keep the pressure on and understand cities like mine, like Memphis, Tennessee, that is predominantly African American, are dependent upon the federal government to do the right thing, because Republicans in the state of Tennessee are going to continue to try to destroy voter rights and make it harder for people like myself and others to exercise their right to vote.
So, Ms. Lamar, break it down for those of us who are here in the bubble of Washington, D.C., inside the Beltway. In one sense, you have the failure of the voting bill. And then the other sense, you have Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, saying, and I love this, black people vote just as much as Americans. I don't know where he thought we were from, or perhaps whether or not we were voting in a different country. But a lot of people say he said the quiet part out loud. What do they say where you are in Tennessee with regards to voting rights and what they see happening in Washington?
Let me make it very clear that we are operating in a world of two people. We like to say this false equivalency that black people are equal to all people, but you see in states where you have large populations of black people, like in Tennessee, you're constantly seeing legislation to limit our right to vote, because we don't want the African American vote to decide what the leadership looks like in this country, just like you saw in Georgia. And so states like Tennessee are trying to pass bills to criminalize the right to vote, which keeps getting struck down in the courtroom. We are trying to go back and scare people to say there were fraudulent elections. They are purging people's vote. People who are not even died, but if you're an inactive voter, they are purging your right to vote. They are not giving out the information you need to understand that the elections are even coming up so you can participate in the election process. Again, we've known for centuries that the black people have had tremendous hurdles hurdles when it comes to exercising their right to vote, even in states like mine in Tennessee. So again, it's imperative that we create a uniform national election system that is going to ensure we put accountability for equity, equality, and fairness in the election process so Black Americans can really truly feel like every other American when it comes to our right to vote. But understand his comments are exactly thoughts. There are two worlds. We have the world of white supremacy and making sure they can control the power and the vote in this country. And you have Black people who have been trying to fight to truly engage in this system equally that they are trying to stop. And at this point, he made it very, very clear, exactly what he meant. And so I think that it's important that Black people make sure their voices are continuously heard by continuing to engage in this process while we demand fair voting rights for our Congress and our state legislatures.
Ms. Lamar, one of the things that's fascinating about this is if you watch this debate unfold and you are a Republican, you're sitting on the sidelines and you're laughing because right now it is Democrat versus Democrat on the issue of voting rights. And like I said, you have Mitch McConnell saying, well, Black people vote just like other Americans. I don't know what he meant. But that being said, if Democrats continue to take on Democrats on the issue of voting rights and the fighting is inside the party, don't Republicans win?
Absolutely. Their inability to pass this voting rights bill is one of the greatest failures of this administration. I myself and hundreds of other legislators stormed Washington, D.C. this summer, demanding that Congress pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the For the People Act, which has been condensed down to one bill. But understand that now when we are entering the midterm elections and we have Congress folks, U.S. senators, and the president asking Black people to vote for Democrats, they're now going to be able to say, but you never delivered on the promises that you gave us. And so we have a couple of months left for this administration to get something right because many of the promises they made to the Black community, in fact, failed. But don't get it wrong. I don't think the Republican Party agenda aligns with what the Black community needs. But understand the Democratic Party is not going to blindly be able to have the loyalty of the Black vote unless they find out a way to deliver on the promises they promised our community, or both the Democrat and the Republican Party will lose the support of Black people. And what it does is set the precedence for younger Black people like myself and others coming up under me to lose faith in the voting process and the political process. And that is not exactly what I want to do, what we need to do. So I hope that we continue to put the pressure on. We continue to give faith to the next generation of leaders that's saying that we support voting rights. I myself will be unapologetically pushing for more voting rights justice here in Tennessee because states can do something while we're waiting on the federal government to do what they're supposed to do.
Tennessee State Representative London Lamar. Ms. Lamar, thanks for being with us today.